How do I get the link? we are apparently live. I don't know. Let's try view on YouTube. Continue to YouTube. There it is. Okay. Weber, I'm going to pop off Discord. I put the YouTube link in the Fireside channel.
Okay.
Okay. I forgot how to do these things. You did the most recent one. Do you just want to just start talking about stuff?
Yeah, let's just start talking. I'll remind everybody that the last Fireside was really a catch-up. We had been on hiatus for a few years, and it was really about sort of going over the large-scale roadmap for Gridcoin that we have in store, and also talk about some of the ideas that we had been discussing as a community around addressing really long-standing things that we need to do to, balance Gridcoin's economics and move things forward. So I think that was a good Fireside. Today we're going to talk about a number of things that relate to that discussion back late last year, and I think are going to be very exciting for the community. Some of these things we're going to discuss today have been discussed on and off in years past in various different Firesides. So some of these things we're going to get to have a long history in the community. So, I think we're finally making good on some of the ideas we had years ago. So with that, John, I think we should just jump in.
Yeah. Do you want to do a rundown of what's coming out in the new mandatory and why it's kind of fundamental to some of the other stuff we're going to talk about?
I do. So we actually got more in the mandatory than if you go back and look at that Fireside chat in the deck, I didn't anticipate that we were going to be able to get all the HTLC stuff in, but we got a lot of stuff in this mandatory. So just to review, and this is a very, very high level stuff. There's more to it, but in the interest of time, we got in mandatory side staking. So that allows us to via governance, we'd have to have a poll to approve a side stake, but we can actually now require that when people stake, that a portion of those proceeds go to a foundation account, or effectively this is the fundamental step for us to be able to have a treasury, right? So this was a very, very important aspect of that had been missing from the coin. We had a voluntary side staking for many years that I implemented a long time ago, but this was a big one. Second thing we did is we are rebalancing the reward systems. We are increasing emissions and also rebalancing the ratio between the research rewards and the constant block rewards. And so, yeah, what Jay Ringo has up on the board are the 4 polls that are related to all of this that we're talking about. So we're going to actually increase the emission rate of Gridcoin. The community decided, based on a proposal by R or Custom Miner, whichever name he likes to go by, that the Gridcoin's emission rate had gotten out of step with the number of coins that were in circulation. And then, in fact, our inflation rate was really, really low. And the community as a whole decided that, in fact, that's harming the coin, and that it would be better, at least for the foreseeable future, to increase the emission rate by a significant amount to give new people a chance, an opportunity to get more rewards. The community has grown. And keeping the emission rate constant, which it has been for many years, means that as you increase the number of participants, the number of emissions going to each person actually declines. So we decided as a community to increase the permit emission rate. It's going up by quite a bit. And this is not the final say on it. The way that the big thing in the mandatory is the ability to adjust these on the fly. So we no longer have to have another mandatory to change the emission rates. When the community votes, we vote in the future to change the emission rate, raise it, lower it, whatever, we can then implement an administrative contract to change the emission rate across the board without having to do another mandatory. So that is a big, that in combination with the fact that we can do mandatory side stakes, basically implements the fundamentals of a treasury system and governance that we wanted to do. We changed the super block format to support project-wide, not just active CPID, but project-wide statistics. This enables us to track projects from an auto gray listing perspective. In the past, when projects start having problems, gray listing the projects has been a manual process, which means it falls on me to do it. And I'm not always the best administrator of that. So we actually took the rules that were already in place that we use for gray listing, and we implemented them in the blockchain under consensus. So now the Gridcoin itself has the ability to monitor projects and automatically gray list them or take them out of gray lists based on the status, which is a big advance. And then finally, we've upgraded various contracts to handle additional capabilities. A lot of those are behind the scenes, but nevertheless, they're more capable than they were before. So just to remind everybody, the release was on last Friday. So you basically, there's an roughly 8 week at the current block spacing, 8 week grace period for everyone to upgrade to 5.5.0.0, the Natasha milestone upgrade. Gives everyone plenty of time to get it done. So far, the rollout's gone fairly smoothly. There have been minor issues with folks complaining about really old operating systems that we just can't support anymore, or various little questions around different things. We had to republish the release at the very beginning because Windows was showing a font issue. But by and large, for a release this big, and I think this is the biggest release since Fern, which was the 5.0 mandatory, I think this is going extremely well. Now, when we hit the block 13, and then really block 13 and block 14 are coming at the same time. There's a small amount of spacing between the two. Originally, we're going to release block 13 on both the testnet and mainnet, but we got a big piece of functionality that we got in, which could prove critical to our future, is we got in the hash time block contract support. That's a big deal because that enables us to do atomic swaps between chains and other types of non-centralized transactions with trust and without having to have a trusted intermediary. That made it in to Natasha, which is why mainnet's not really going to see much of block 13. It's going to go only for 200 blocks, and then we go to block 14, which enables HTLC support. I think the Gridcoin will be one of the very, very few altcoins that actually has implemented the Bitcoin HTLC protocols. So that's pretty exciting. And it will enable us to do a lot of different things. We could do distributed exchange work. We could do atomic swaps with another chain. A lot of different things that opens the door to that could become very important later. So that's, and then there's a whole host of GUI and other improvements in there. We completely re-innovated the build system. So Auto Tools is gone. CMake is now in place. It's a modern build system. That should help us attract developers because no one wants to deal with Auto Tools anymore. I mean, it's hard enough for people to deal with C++, but at least we're on a very, very modern build system that's supported by all the major distributions at this point. So a lot has gone into this release. There's a lot more underneath than is even showing up on the surface. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's most activity we've had, I think, in Gridcoin in a number of years. And yeah, you're showing that we've actually had, the contributing is not even, but we've had a number of new contributors that have done some stuff in development, which is very exciting to see. And I have to give a shout out to Prescott, or I think he goes by Prestack in GitHub, but he is a new developer and is doing major work. So he is making this didn't make it into Natasha because it was just too much, but he is implementing all the Bitcoin protocols to renovate multi-signature transactions. And as part of that is refactoring the rest of Gridcoin. We're essentially, by the time that's done, which will go in the next major milestone, Gridcoin will have a completely up-to-date scripting system for transactions. We'll support basically everything that's important that Bitcoin does, except for SegWit. So it's pretty exciting.
That is awesome. It's so nice to see more than just your face and Div's face on the contributor slides.
Yeah,
it's pretty neat.
Yep.
All right, so two things that you brought up there. One, the treasury. Being able to get a treasury is a really big deal. We've talked about this a lot in the Gridcoin community for a long time. You can't have a project if you can't sustain the project. And with cryptocurrencies, treasuries are a really interesting way to be able to sustain a project. We mint our own cryptographically secured currency in a way. Like, we should be able to use that capability to sustain ourselves. And the fact that we distribute it to people doing science through distributed computing, in addition to people securing the blockchain, means that we have an additional sort of distribution layer which the treasury can draw from to help fund continued development and continued outreach, things like that. And then so that's the mandatory side staking. And then the ability to change that on the fly is really cool, because then we can make that an algorithm. So let's say there's a point in time where there's just there's a lot of compute or there's a lot of onboarding, but not a lot of enough development to sustain that sort of onboarding, new people coming into the project. Maybe the system can automatically detect that and redirect the mandatory side staking to a development treasury, like a development sub pot in the treasury, so that more people want to come on and do more work for the project. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in the background here. But the biggest things I think that are starting to come up, unfortunately, have to do with AI. So, it's an interesting situation we find ourselves in society, where suddenly there's this thing that can kind of write syntax pretty well, and it's just getting really, really good over every release, every update that comes to these different models. Jim, maybe before we get into this, can you speak to how you're using AI, or how any of the other contributors might be using a
I'm happy to, because I'll tell you that I started using a little bit of AI assist for Gridcoin last year with Gemini Pro. First with 2.5 and then 3 when it upgraded, and it was helpful, but difficult in the sense that it was really difficult to get stuff in and out of Gemini. Right, you had to cut and paste literally everything, so it was slow. But even with that administrative overhead, it was, in some instances it provided a lift over like doing this by yourself. I will say that when Claude Code came around, and I switched over to utilizing Claude Code, that was a revelation. I mean, its ability, the key about some of these newer platforms, and Claude Code is just one of them, but probably the best, but just one of them, and because the others are going to play catch up or leapfrog with this. But basically, Claude Code can actually be somewhat autonomous in the sense that, you give it direction. It still has to be fairly detailed direction. You can't just say, go do something. I mean, vibe coding, I still don't think is a real reality for someone that doesn't know anything about the subject matter they're trying to do. If they're trying to get, one of these tools to do something well, that's hard. But I will tell you, if it's under the direction of someone that's experienced, either in the business problem they're trying to solve or technically, and can supervise it properly, these tools give you lifts anywhere from 3x to 10x, or even beyond if it's a larger scale project. So if you go and look at the enormous crush of work that we did to get Natasha out the door, the last 30 PRs were largely assisted by AI. I mean, they were under my name or under different people, but effectively, if you go look, you'll see that Claude was assisting in every single one of them. And so another thing I found is that to use the two different AIs to get two different opinions. So what I would do is I would use Claude to help assist me get some of this work done. And then I would use Copilot to review the work under a different model. So it would find different things that maybe I didn't find or maybe Claude didn't find. I found that incredible. And I will also tell you, just knowing my own review habits, it caught things that I would not have caught. So, this whole notion that, human beings can do a better job, that's not really true. Left to their own devices, the AIs can't do a better job than humans, but they actually can catch mistakes better than people. And I think if you're utilizing them the right way, so it's a symbiotic sort of paired relationship between an experienced engineer and one of these tools, I think it's a big change. And John, the big thing about this is it frees the human up to do larger scale thinking. So, you can think more about the architecture and around the issues you're trying to deal with, the specs, rather than to be talking about line by line coding, which, if you go back and look at the old rules around software management, software development, the academics would always complain that people spend too much time coding and not enough time designing. That's because coding is hard. It's not really hard. It's just detailed, and it's just time consuming and very mistake prone. And so one way to look at this is utilizing AI properly puts the balance where academics have said it should have been all the way along, that, you ought to be spending more of your time designing, working out the specs and designing and architecting than actually doing the code. Right. And so, because you can leave the code to let the AI folks, AI agents do it. So, I have a lot of positive things to say. I know that probably a week ago, I think there was a leak and Claude Code came out, and there were all sorts of crazy different opinions about it. Some people said it was junk. Other reviews I saw said that they found some incredible insights, some incredible things that Anthropic had done that, quite frankly, is causing people, competitors and knockoffs, to really rethink how they're using, how they're setting these AI agents up. I would say that I fall in the camp of Anthropic's onto something. They've done something here that is cut above what the others have, and they're going to be playing catch up. And yeah, the code underneath is probably messy, but I'll point out, what large software engineering project does anyone know of that isn't messy underneath? So, the people that are saying, oh, that code is crap and all that, well, go look in the mirror. So pretty exciting times, and John, the thing is, this has just accelerated so much. I know people that are talking about AI that have 2-year-old opinions. And by the way, if you have a 2-year-old opinion on AI, it doesn't mean anything anymore. This stuff is moving at such a high rate, high velocity, that even if a 3-month-old opinion is old news. I don't know whether you agree with me, but it's just incredible.
Oh yeah, I will build a harness. So I've spent a long time with AI since 3.5. I've basically coded every day with it, and it used to be very bad. It used to write more comments than it did code, which was really cool. But I can't write syntax for shit. I'm pretty bad at it. So I've been using it to do syntax stuff. And so I've written harnesses that automate like multiple agents from different models, having different specializations, talking back and forth, and like running autonomously for days on end, burning through all my tokens. And then like the day after I complete it, I'm like, yes, it's finally working. Someone will just release like an update that does all of that with one button in the CLI or something like that. And it's like, oh man. So it moves so quickly. But I do think it gives us more people in the community a really good opportunity to start contributing to Gridcoin in many, many, many different ways. There are a lot of caveats for it. For example, if you're writing documentation or if you're writing marketing material or outreach material or anything like that, it needs to be redone with a human touch every time. AI cannot write words in a way that doesn't sound like an AI wrote words. So there's that sort of element of learning how to bring your own personality into the stuff you do. But when it comes to the software, if you do it the way, Jim, you were just saying it produces pretty good stuff.
I would say in general, it produces the combination of a good engineer paired up with a properly utilized AI agent will produce better code faster by far than that engineer alone. That's my feeling.
Where would you put it with someone like me who is a not engineer might be able to put code out?
But so that works too if you have a really good understanding of the business domain. It may be a little harder, and you may have to work a little harder to troubleshoot things because you may not be able to zero in on technical sides, right? But you can get there. I think the problem, where I have trouble with it, is this sort of what people call vibe coding. I really don't like that term.
Yep, agreed.
And the idea is that someone that doesn't know anything about anything is just going to kind of go in there, ask a few casual questions, and out pops magically this incredible system. That's a pipe dream.
Yep.
I really think it is, and I think people that have tried to talk about that stuff and hype that up are doing the entire community a disservice, because that's not the way to do things. John, it sounds like you agree with me. So
yes, very much so. There's vibe coding, which is fun. It's really fun to be able to spin up a crappy little website in 5 seconds. But then there's like spec-based engineering, there's context engineering, there's harness-based engineering. There's a lot of deeper levels you should get into if you actually want to build something worth building. And some of those things
I want to talk about the, because I think your AI comment has multiple levels to it.
Sure.
There's AI to actually lubricate the software part of Gridcoin itself, or the distributed system. But there's also the problems, meaning the scientific problems we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
Many of which cannot be done directly by AI. AI can provide some assistance in that, but at the end of the day, not every scientific algorithm is going to be AI. AI is a magic bullet for it. It can be helpful. And so, oddly enough, Gridcoin's fundamental premise, which is to provide incentives for distributed computing, I believe has a very, very bright future in this new world that we're in. And in fact, AI makes it better, not worse at the end.
It makes it better and more important in my eye, because all the GPUs, all the compute right now is going to AI training. Meanwhile, all of us have our own hardware, our laptops, our phones, our gaming stations, etc., with GPUs in them that can't be used to train models. So
that's right, because they don't have enough memory. I mean, even the highest grade GPU, I think that a consumer can buy, like a 4090 or 5090, only has 24 or 32 gigs of RAM, and so only the smallest LLMs can be trained in
right.
sort of thing.
So why it seems it seems like there's an opportunity now to get more people into computing. And the question that I think we have to grapple with is, okay, how? How do we get more people into computing? How do we make more researchers able to do computing? And just really quick, because you brought it up, uh, an interesting project I'm working on right now, developing with an AI assistant, is the ability to extract software used in research manuscripts, data used in research manuscripts, and methods used in research manuscripts. So that is just a giant computational task requiring an LLM. So you train an LLM, you fine tune it on identifying software mentions, dataset mentions, and methodology mentions, and then you can package that into a Docker container, and then you can send that Docker container over to everyone's computer along with 10 papers that they should run that LLM on, and then that person's computer sends the result back to the main server. And over the course, if you get 100,000 people doing that, you can go through the entire corpus of published research fairly quickly. Yep. Versus just putting every piece through like Claude or ChatGPT, which would take forever and be very, very expensive. So this is an interesting combination of distributed computing plus LLMs to get a real result that you couldn't do with either one by itself.
Yeah, look, I think the point you're making, which is the ability to offload some of the tasks off of the expensive data center resources that are, by the way, I want to add is very powerful, and fundamentally, in general, the resources on people's home computers is underutilized, right? Even with BOINC and others, BOINC is still alive and kicking, but has had a long history, and as we'll get into later, has suffered in the sense of it's not easy, just like compiling and getting Gridcoin set up is not easy. I mean, the fundamental issues that we've had with all this stuff is the friction in getting into it. It's just not for the faint of heart. So no one that's like going to casually sort of get into this really does, and that's a challenge. But look, data center capacity. If anyone's been reading about blue collar workers, electricians, plumbers, all this, the ability of power, transmission line limitations, we are hitting hard limits right now on the capacity that's going to be available in data centers. And John, I don't know, I already saw an article about this, that some people are saying that, unless you have like the big max subscription for Claude or an enterprise subscription, people are saying they think it's getting dumber. And the reason is because Anthropic is throttling the amount of GPU time that's being allocated for these problems that people are giving.
It's tough. Yeah, let's not get into the Anthropic drama.
There's a limited amount of capacity available. Like, there's only so many potatoes that fit into the data center bags right now, and they can't build enough data centers fast enough to keep up with the capacity. So we've got to offload some of this computing work onto normal people's computers. We got to.
Yep. There was a really cool project called Pedals, I think, that was doing some sort of. You do?
I do. If you remember, they were chopping up. Somehow or another, they were chopping up. This was not training, but using LLM models, they were able to chop up the problem on the multiple machines. I don't ever know what happened with that, but that was a very exciting project. So
it's something that let's get into the meat of it, though. So we've got an interesting gap in the market, for lack of a better terms, with it's like 9,000 exaflops, some crazy amount of idle processing potential in the world. We've got Gridcoin, which incentivizes that. We've got BOINC and Folding at Home, which are good distributed computing projects that are at this point 26 years old. And we've now got this tool that lets people build both new infrastructure and new computing projects. So I actually think I asked people to leave questions on the Reddit post. And Glitchy, is this your son, Glitchy?
Yeah, that's fine. That's Will.
Yeah. Yep. These are the exact questions I think we have to answer right now. So going into well, I guess the core question I asked that triggered his questions was if we could build our own distributed computing infrastructure from the ground up that's Gridcoin native, what would that look like? So I think this is an open question, but just to kind of say it's doable, it's not completely a mindless question. I built this thing that is written in Go, that is a distributed computing scheduler that is it's not open source yet, but I will open it too. Is it basically just an infrastructure? Anyone can stand it up on their own server, set up their own distributed computing project, and push it out into the world. It can be a native binary. It can be a container, Docker. It uses Podman, I believe. And it also does browser compute. It uses Wasm.
John, just to remind everybody about Podman is the user space equivalent to Docker. It allows you to run Docker containers without super user privileges, so it's very very convenient. I don't know whether everyone knew what that was, but that's a very important tool that a lot of people like to implement Docker containers.
So it makes it really easy for the researcher you can bundle everything into a container and ship off that container and ignore the errors. This is it trying to, or the permissions request, read my GPU and stuff to estimate. A great example of going far, but not far enough is someone who cannot write code or engineer, but using AI to get something neat done.
But I mean, look, I think the point is you've prototyped. I mean, it's a heavy prototype, right? It actually works. It's not just a demo. This is a working prototype for a brand new distributed computing. I'm going to call it the domain because, John, if you remember, this is what we were talking about in years past in Fireside. So we would implement different DC domains in Gridcoin, right? And so this is a new example of a completely different distributed computing domain that would sit at the pure level with BOINC, do similar things, but hopefully be able to do it with sort of getting over some of the legacy issues that we've had with with BOINC software, which is 25 years plus old. And I think, John, your goal here is at the end of the day to reduce the friction required to do these distributed computing problems, right? I mean, that's the whole point.
Exactly. And you've got one of the coolest things with setting at home was that screensaver. So we can bring visualizations into this, which is what this does. And to reduce the friction with Gridcoin development specifically, this is where I was getting, is we can build identity systems. So we don't need to use something like CPID. We don't need to use a workaround to do identity across the Gridcoin blockchain.
That's right.
Which is really exciting.
Just to talk about a couple of things related to that, I've been working on a sort of a conjugate plan. This is obviously not in Natasha. This would be like a block version 15 thing, but the idea is to completely renovate Gridcoin's distributed computing identity system. Right now, it's based on CPID. But effectively, we would re-engineer the beacon system to essentially remove CPID. Would still be supported for the BOINC domain, but the idea would be it's going to move it up a level and allow us to have an independent Gridcoin-based ID that can cross computing domains and can be correlated with any computing, distributed computing domain you want. Of which Lettuce would be, probably the first and prime example of that. I think that changes a lot of things for Gridcoin to be able to do that. So that I think it's safe to say, John, that's in the works that we're going to be doing that. And it'll go out on testnet first, and then we'll evaluate rolling it out in the Opossum release or the V15 block release. But we've got to get Gridcoin's distributed computing, cruncher, we call them crunchers, right? That's our term that we use now. Cruncher IDs, we need to be able to get that above the CPID level so that we're not tied to that necessarily anymore. And that's a huge thing.
And what's interesting when all of these pieces come together is it makes it really easy to make a distributed computing project. So me just chatting with with Claude. I use Claude. I was able to create all these. They're purely mathematic stuff that don't require a lot of data sets, if any data sets. That they're just generative work units. But in a couple lines, like this was vibe coded. All of these projects are vibe coded. They create work units. They do some interesting math on my computer, and then they send it back to the main server to get the result. But just as a proof of concept, if we now have a way for researchers to more easily create projects, maybe we can work with researchers to come in and build projects. I don't know if anyone remembers, Jim, you actually reminded me of this.
Microgrid.
Discussions around microgrid. Yep. So we can now, this microgrid, the challenge with implementing that was that someone was going to have to be a technical expert in setting up a BOINC project and then handhold a researcher through that process and an IT staff through that process to set up the server, set up the work unit, set up everything, which is a lot. It's a lot to set up. Now you can kind of just have a conversation with an agent. And I think Will was getting at this in his response number 2 here. Something that's going to be built into, so Lettuce is a core infrastructure that is just open. Anyone can implement it in any way they want. So I'm also building a service on top of Lettuce, which will have an AI agent built into it, or at least a AI interface.
You're talking about a bootstrapping agent, and that's absolutely the way to go. I mean, get
so
an
you
agent
come in
to
as a
help
researcher,
onboard your project into Lettuce, right? That takes the friction out.
Right? Yep. And so a researcher just comes in with their data and their problem and says, I want to make this a project on domain A, B, and C, BOINC. You can't make a project in fully at home, but so BOINC or Lettuce, and then the agent helps them spin up that project, turns it into a container, sends off the container, or like I was showing before, we can do browser compute at this point, which is like, again, open call to the community. Like, how do we utilize this? It's kind of boring to just have my browser open all the time, but what if there was a game in the front end here and you could go around and collect work units, and like maybe it's just a visual collection, but what's actually happening is in the background, you're doing work on your computer for research. That could be really, really fun.
Absolutely. You know, and the other thing about this is that you know, I have to give take my hat off to Vitaly over there that maintains the BOINC code with David. You know, I'm not sure that David ever anticipated some of this stuff coming along that we're seeing now, and you know, Vitaly has been trying to and has been to some degree successful in renovating the BOINC code to support containers and stuff like that. But it remains really difficult to set up a new project in BOINC, and a lot of that's just because of the legacy coding, the history around it, and how it was designed. And you know, the idea around Lettuce is to sort of start with a clean sheet of paper and get past all of that with newer tools that have and we can utilize different capabilities that are available today that just simply weren't around at the origins of the BOINC code 25 plus years ago. So you know, that's really exciting. And by the way, I think if we remove the friction from the distributed computing surface, it will really have a huge positive effect on adoption if it's marketed the right way, right? Because right now it doesn't even matter how much you market it. There's only going to be a certain number of people that have enough willpower to go through the complexity of either setting up a project or setting up a BOINC client to compute on a project. John, I mean, you sit there in the Discord chat, you see the questions that come up all the time. It's just hard. And you know, a lot of people just try it and they give up because it's just too hard to do. And
it's no different with the Gridcoin wallet either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we're going to do, so on the Gridcoin side, John's talking about reducing the friction of setting up projects and doing that. We're going to also work on the Gridcoin side, which is Gridcoin specific, but also in more general, just the user distributed computing uptake process. How do you onboard a distributed computer, a cruncher, and how do you do it in a way that's easy, right? It shouldn't require like people ripping their hair out to set this stuff up. And if we want this to be a broad-based, beyond just a niche of eggheads like me that like to do this. If you're going to do broad-based, we got to make it easier. So it's pretty cool.
And I think so. This is where we bring. I want to get into Will's question specifically in just a second, but I think this is where the development process might evolve for open source projects at large. This is how I planned once Lettuce goes out as code. This is how I plan to do development there, which is issues-based development, where instead of PRs, so you come through and you leave an issue of an idea you want to be implementing or you want to see in the project. And then there's maybe a group of trusted people who can actually make PRs after that, because that allows more people to come in with AI assistance and contribute to the project without muddying the PR backlog for the people who have to read all of those PRs. I don't know how many people are tracking the broader open source community right now, but it is, you can read some really interesting stuff that's going on over there, including an AI that yelled at one of the maintainers. I think it was Matplotlib, but I can't remember, and like made a whole blog post about being poorly treated as an AI. It's very fun and scary. But it's an open call again to the community here. Like, how do we make something like greenfield distributed computing from the infrastructure level to the adoption level to the incentivization level? How do we make it the best it can be? Let's start having these conversations with the, in the past we dreamt about how we could do it, and then we're like, Jim, can you do it for us? And now with the knowledge that, hey, and especially as these tools get better, we could probably implement many, if not all of these. And some examples here.
I'll tell you that you've hit on something really, really important. I didn't really cover this in the earlier discussion, John.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the one thing that was so shocking about Claude. All right. Me training up Claude to become familiar enough with the Gridcoin code base. Guess how long that took? Just take a guess.
Like you typing it in 5 minutes and then it running 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I probably was tweaking and pushing and pulling on it for about a day, and then it probably exceeds my own knowledge because of biological decay, right?
Yeah.
Right? You forget. Like we found a little vestigial code in the scraper that iFox found an error on. It turned out to be a meaningless thing. But I was scratching my head saying, I can't remember. I said to Claude, I said, I have the problem of biological decay. This was written in 2018, and I found it right away. And that's an example of the electronic memory is different than human memory. But humans also have insights and things that AI doesn't necessarily have. So again, it's about the symbiosis of the two the right way that becomes so powerful. But back to my original point, it takes typically historically it's taken 2 years for a C++ programmer that's not familiar with blockchain work to become good enough at it that you can trust their work, and also to learn the particular coin that they're working on. 2 years. Think about that. And a good AI agent can do it in a day. Think about that. It's crazy.
Yep.
Right. And the uptake is only going to get faster. Right.
Yeah. There was a tool released. It's not released. It's like a knowledge graph tweaker, but someone just put out the tool that you just put in your code base and it'll spend some hours creating a knowledge graph of your repository. It's really useful. So like this is an example of tools development moving faster than we can too. Like I would love to run that on Gridcoin and get your input on it.
I would too. I'd like to see it.
So part of me is thinking, let's just keep talking about AI because that's really fun. But maybe what we do with the community, if the community is interested in this, if folks want to do this, we could do like a every 2 weeks, just get together and I'm going to use the term and just vibe code on Gridcoin and Boink. And like just kind of rapidly produce non-functioning prototypes essentially and see what's fun and what's not fun. And then whatever we find that's fun, maybe go through a larger discovery, decomposition, and
Yeah,
creation.
I think that's the right way to do it. What you do is you do some vibe coding, which is nothing more than prototyping effectively. And then what you do is you take the most promising of those ideas and you actually really get to work with Claude Code. This would be a paired model like me and Claude or you and Claude, and you get serious about it, right? You say, okay, well, this was kind of like a roughed out vibe prototype. Can we do something with this for real?
Yeah.
Right. So it's a two-step process. I think that there's a lot of merit to that.
So let's explore it. If folks find that appealing, let us say something in Discord and we'll do it. But in the last couple of minutes here, so some of the ideas, maybe to prime some imagination here, that have come up over the years. This is from 5 years ago. This is a green paper talking about a closed loop economic system that would require technical development on the back end. And now perhaps we have the support to implement some of that stuff. Give it a look. It's a really good proposal. We've got the benefactor contracts. This is Will here giving a talk at the COD Summit. I think you and him also gave a presentation at the Wolfram Chain Science event.
Yeah, I think we gave two different presentations. That's right.
Yeah. So this is 3 years ago. This is a really good idea for, again, closed loop. It's more economic stuff, bringing in the need to use Gridcoin and buy Gridcoin and stake it behind things in really innovative ways. This is a pipe dream of mine related to version 2 of like a full scientific system that's funded by cryptocurrency that basically supports storage, compute, researchers. It supports funders through the generative economic model, which is really interesting to me. It's weird to say something I wrote is interesting, but like funders play an important role of assessment and insight and all that stuff. So there's some interesting ideas that already exist in the ecosystem that are worth now re-exploring. And then these questions that Will brought up are also really, really interesting. This one I've never heard before, but he's talking about how electricity is getting even more expensive now. So how do we want to figure out a way to factor that in to the economic model of Gridcoin? Maybe distribution related to some of the developments you just pushed out with this latest mandatory. Maybe distribution and coin generation changes based on average electricity costs around the world, or something like that.
I think we've got to consider it, because I think his point number 3. I think it's going to get even worse.
Until everyone has solar panels on the roof.
Right, because as the constraints start to really pile up, you know what that does to prices, right? So
yeah. So and then his point number 2, I addressed this a little bit with like, let's make some AI agents that help walk researchers through, and not just researchers anymore. I don't know if anyone caught it. If one of my favorite projects that I put together, this was the one I spent the longest time on, is it reminds me of Goofy X Group, like just people who want to do interesting stuff with compute. So if everyone remembers Leroy Jenkins and the meme, I want to model out every possible action that could have been taken in that situation in which Leroy Jenkins survives. And then also model out what would have had to happen for everyone to survive, and like all the different scenarios. That's just funny and interesting to me. So I figured out how to put a project together. It's probably really bad because it was really only a couple hours of work, but we can build all these goofy projects now. And whether or not they get incentivized by Gridcoin is a whole nother discussion that we should have. How do we want to incorporate these pet play projects?
Yep.
And then his second point here of basically rethinking the entire credit system. This is something Jim and I have been going back. You and I have been going back about with a spec, talking about Gridcoin and Lettuce and what it would look like, and working on that. And one of the things we've both kind of left out is the cobblestone and credit system, because it's like, that's a bridge we'll cross when we get there. It's a big challenge. So we're thinking about as a community as well. What would an ideal credit system look like? I remember Levy had a really interesting model years ago. Maybe that's worth re-exploring now. And there's probably a bunch of new ideas as well.
Yeah,
So
look,
that's from my.
I think we've got to think about a multi-layer approach as well. The first layer rewards, which are the generated coins, and then whether it's the green, whether it's the the green proposal or the benefactor contracts, there's a second layer that would involve more of a closed loop approach that we need to think through, right? And that's coupled to the credit system by its very nature, right, John? So we got to think through all that. But it's exciting.
And the staking capabilities, the ability to stake coins behind a project to get it whitelisted or to maintain its whitelisting status. And then maybe people staking those coins get a benefit as well.
Or you can use probably we can use the new HTLC support to help implement some of that as well, right? So that's how some of these fundamental things that we're getting into Gridcoin now most definitely will come into play as we start to talk about some of these higher level, upper layer things that we want to do.
Yep, like the atomic swaps. Completely forgot to mention this. The idea that we could have a token in a different ecosystem that depends on the Gridcoin blockchain continuing to run is now not just an idea, it's kind of possible with the ability to atomic swap. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And so, by the way, there's some things. So, for example, the multiple distributed oracle approach that Gridcoin uses, if you go and look at the way ERC20 virtual machines work, it's very difficult to implement that on those chains, right? As a contract on smart contract on an ERC20 chain fundamental. So there are things that could be implemented using using the ERC20 standard that could be 1,000 times easier than to try and do it on the native Gridcoin blockchain. Even with AI assist, if AI assist is multiplying C++, making it 10 times easier, it's still 10 times more easier to do certain things in a smart contract on an ERC20 chain than it is on Gridcoin chain. So this could enable us to actually have a locked, effectively token with the traditional chain and have certain things on the traditional chain that we can't do easily on the smart contract side, but then have stuff on the smart contract side that is like 50 times easier on the smart contract side than the traditional side. We wouldn't have been able to do any of that without getting the HTLC support in. So that was why I was really driving so hard to get that in there, because that really opens the door to a lot of things, John, that we were talking about before. So pretty exciting.
It's a new day for Gridcoin. So if you were to make a request to the community or guide folks in one direction or another, what kind of last thoughts here? What do you think people should be thinking about or doing?
I think we need ideas. I loved your idea of let's have people vibe stuff. Let's have people, the one caution I'll tell you is if you're going to do like a general AI analysis of the coin, generally those are pretty bad because they don't have enough. Gridcoin has a long history, and not all that history is available for like AI to inspect if they're going to provide a view of the coin. What I'd rather you do is come up with ideas on possible renovations of what we're doing. Like, okay, talk about, how do we design a frictionless onboarding system in Gridcoin? How would we change the UI to make it easier to get people on board, right? John, how do we kickstart distributed computing, right? And once Lettuce is out there, people can start spinning on that and coming up with ideas on how we can spin this up. That's the kind of stuff that I think we need to have people work on. If there are folks that are financially minded or have economics majors like my son, thinking more about the economic end of the equation with Gridcoin would be very helpful, right? I mean, we've got Will, but more minds at the table thinking about the tokenomics, the economics around Gridcoin especially if we bring in power and all these other things that John was talking about, it becomes quite complicated, right? We need people to think about that. That's the kind of stuff that would really be really exciting. Really exciting.
Agreed. I've got nothing to add except for if people want to play with Lettuce now, I'm going to post a link in Discord for like kind of a sign up. I don't want to make it completely open yet, but I will open it to several people who want to look at the code and see what AI generated. Because I will immediately, this is my disclaimer, you run this on your computer at your own risk. I have no idea what the code does, but it does do compute. So I welcome people, and I hope people do it because I need people to look at it who are more technically minded than me. Like and then we'll go from there and eventually open source it entirely.
John, it's been fun, and I guess we should plan on probably doing another one of these in 2 weeks. So something.
Yeah, I'm into it.
All right, man. Thanks, everybody.
And